people look back at a grisly moment in the state's history. It's October 14th, 1854, reflecting the hostility of many of Maine's Protestants to an influx of Roman Catholics. A mob of know-nothings in Ellsworth tars and feathers a Jesuit priest from Switzerland, Johann Baptist, and tries unsuccessfully to set him on fire. The local sheriff disperses the mob at gunpoint. The Know-Nothings were a short-lived but powerful American political movement in the 1850s that was hostile toward immigrants, particularly Irish and German Catholics. Officially known as the American Party, they were nicknamed the Know-Nothings because members of their secret societies were instructed to respond, "I know nothing," when asked about the movement. Earlier in the year, the Know-Nothings blew up a Catholic school Baptist had founded in Ellsworth and tried to burn his church. Baptist later becomes the first president of Boston College. John Baptist Memorial High School in Bangor is named after him. Until tomorrow, I'm Brian Sullivan.